Hello, and welcome to this episode of Your Destiny Today with your hosts, Anthony Turner and Megan Ortega. Join us today as we explore a wide array of topics from a kingdom and biblical perspective. It is our goal to inform, equip, and mobilize you to walk in the fullness of your destiny today. Now let's join Anthony and Megan. Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Your Destiny Today. I am your host, Anthony Turner, but I have the special privilege now of being joined with my co-host for at least once a month, probably a little bit more than that, my co-host, Megan Ortega. Hello, Megan. How are you?
Hi, Anthony. I'm doing really well today.
Well, I'm telling you, I am excited. It is a thrill. We talked and kind of let people know the last time we were together that this would be something that we would be doing is at a minimum of once a month, getting to team up and talk about different topics and different things that affect culture, that affect the body of Christ, that affect families. And I honestly, I don't know any better person I would rather team up with. Megan and I have had the opportunity to, of course, talk about different things that we were going to touch on, hot topics that to use I'm from the South. I am from Alabama, but actually Megan taught me a new colloquialism as we were talking. She says, yeah, I've got some things that have burned my butter. And I was like, what? Oh, I love it. So anyway, Megan is with me today, and she'll be with me possibly even more than once a month. But right now we're doing some audio podcasting for until we get some other things worked out. But then you'll see both of us on screen at some point in our video podcast. So I am just thrilled and excited, and I'm gonna turn it over to you for a second, Megan, just to kind of. You do a free flow and just let our audience know what you hope to accomplish when we get together for these podcasts and these talks.
Well, thanks, Anthony. I'm really honored to be on with you, and it's really exciting and fun to have a conversation with somebody who's like-minded and hearted, but with your own perspective. So it's really fun to get kind of lost in conversation with you. And I think that Burn My Butter might be a Dolly Parton from some sort of a maybe 9 to 5 or a Steel Magnolias, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, I feel like I can hear it in her head. That really burns my butter. But anyway, and I love butter.
So do I. Yeah.
But so I've just been thinking a lot about culture and where we are culturally with kind of the changing of the guard in a lot of ways that's going on right now, and sort of what I would call getting back to ancient paths that I feel that Christianity has probably lost over the last 50 to 100 years, maybe.
Yeah.
And kind of pulling back to what does it mean to be a human made in the image of God. And I guess that would be the theme that if something's going to burn my butter, it's going to be when the image of God is messed with in people. And you and I had a previous conversation to this, but you were talking about the mama bears arising, and that is one of the mama bear things, I guess, that gets me,
right.
Is when you have an attack by what I say principalities, powers, and spiritual powers of darkness.
Amen.
Against the image of God, which goes back to the garden. So those are kind of that's a broad way of looking at the things that I get passionate about, I suppose.
Well, the thing that's beautiful about what you just said, and something that I feel like all of us need to really slow down and get that aerial perspective of, is the fact that what is what is all of this about? One of the
Mm.
things that I like to sometimes slow myself down, because you can get embroiled and impassioned and overheated about a lot of things, but the way to be effective in navigating some of those things is to slow down, walk in the peace of God, and say, okay, what is,
Mm.
especially we know the Bible says in John chapter 10 that the thief comes not but
Mm.
for to steal, kill, and destroy. Now, I just
Mm-hmm.
quoted out of the King James because that's what I learned in Bible school. So,
My favorite.
yeah. But I love even how the King James phrases that: the thief comes not. In other words, the only time the enemy comes is to steal, kill, and destroy. So that should be an indication that part of what's happening in our culture, in the world, is the thief's attempt to steal. And you hit it right on the head when you said to steal the image of God. Because that's the very first thing that God says when he talked about man. Let us make man in our image and after our likeness.
Mm-hmm.
So what better way to keep people from purpose than to steal the true image, to distort the image? And
Yes.
so first and foremost, everything that I think Megan and I talk about on the show today and even in future shows is that to me would be the plumb line, or the calibrated to zero, where we know and understand that the things that we're talking about is what was in the heart and in the mind of God for his creation, for man, for woman, for boy, for girl, for family, for nation, for city, for church. What was in the heart and the mind of God? And I want our listeners to kind of chew and muse on that reality. What was in the mind of God? What was in the heart of God when he made the declarations and the decrees that he did? And so from there, we're going to use that, I think, Megan, if that's okay with you, as our springboard. So I'm going to turn it back over to you to kind of steer us in our conversation today.
I love it. So I'll use the NLT version here because it's a nice, well, it's the first one that popped up on my Bible app, so I'm being honest.
Okay.
But Genesis 1:27, we'll just go back. God created human beings, or man and woman, in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. Then God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and govern it. Reign over the fish of the sea and the birds in the sky and all the animals that scurry along the ground. And God gave everything to them. And then verse 31, we skip down, it says, then God looked over all he had made and he saw that it was very good. And so that's the original. And God never has given up on his plan A.
Amen.
Sin did not deter him from plan A. He always said that he gave the earth to humans and he wanted us to rule over it and to use it responsibly, not as our own, but on his behalf, as bearing his images, his ambassadors. And so, but it takes a male and a female coming together to then create babies, to then propagate and to continue this scheme.
Right.
So when I look at, for lack of a better term, the culture wars, everything I see is aimed at stopping that union and then stopping the reproduction and then stopping the well-being of those babies that have been born into the world. And so when we look at current sexual morality, the state of it is terrifying. But then you also look at what are the things being defended right now. It would be the type of sexual behavior that does not lead to reproduction, And it would also then be the type of quote unquote freedom that leads you to lead a life of dissipation so that you never will become a productive member of society. So you will do drugs, so that you will sit and play video games for hours, so that you will be isolated and never come together with anybody else. And then if you even look at it like on the climate front, like they're trying to kill cows, I'm not joking. In Ireland, they're wanting to butcher all these cows because of the carbon footprint that everything is making.
Wow.
And it's like, so all these people are like, can't eat meat anymore. But even the way, and I'm way for being a climate or for stewarding the earth well, because that's part of our dominion mandate. It's part of the mandate that God gave people to steward the earth well. But the way it's going about is actually anti-human, where you have to make your presence as small as possible, and you can't affect the planet because the planet is more sacred than you are. And that's a reversal of what God said. So when I look at all of these areas, there's ways that the enemy has twisted something that is good, that we should, be partaking in.
Right.
But he's twisted it all. And so the biggest area right now, and it's June, so everybody's talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing would be sexual behavior, sexual morality.
Yeah.
And basically, like, so women, we are made, you and I were talking about this earlier, we are made to have huge amounts of compassion for those that we see are marginalized or oppressed. And I think that is a good and God-given aspect of femininity specifically.
Absolutely.
But I feel that it's being manipulated right now. So the thing that's being claimed is that the LGBTQ, community is marginalized. Therefore, we need to lift them up so that they're not bullied. And I am not for bullying anyone or demeaning the image of God in any individual.
Right.
But it's come to such an extreme that what happens is that the enemy tempts us. It happened in the garden where it was like his way of tempting was his strategy was always to separate and then destroy. And so if God made you in his image, we'll talk about the transgender thing right now. If God made you in his image, then the thing that the enemy will whisper to you is God made a mistake. He made your male soul, he put it in this female body. And you have to now butcher yourself in order to make your inside and your outside match.
Right.
And how has it become a compassionate response to say, that's okay, butcher yourself, like mar the image that God created into and mold yourself into this other thing.
Yeah.
And I don't understand how that's spoken of as compassionate anymore. It's like, no, like you've just marred yourself. And so now the thing is that as, grown-ups in a country that loves freedom, we've said, you know what, you go ahead and do that. If you're an adult, you do what you do. That's what we've said, which, that's debatable. But the place, I think, where I and many mothers have just said, oh, this madness has to stop, is that they are, and this is not an exaggeration, they are chemically castrating children.
Yes.
They are surgically mutilating their bodies and sterilizing them before they're old enough to go back to this Genesis 1 mandate, which is to be fruitful and multiply. So they're stopping their generations.
Yes.
And it's appalling and it's terrible because these children don't know what they're doing. And so many people have gone through this type of surgery and then regretted it because of the level of complications. I am also a nurse. So what you're doing is you're taking someone who is under the age of 20 and you're giving them a medically unnecessary procedure that will then give them complications for the rest of their life.
Wow. Yeah.
And so they will have to have more surgeries. They will have to be on medication for the foreseeable future. And I know people who are diabetic, who are type 1 diabetics, and none of them had a choice in whether or not they had to be on insulin for the rest of their life.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell you that their families would have never elected to make them such that they would have to have insulin for the rest of their lives.
Right.
And this is mothers and fathers taking their children to these gender clinics, and then willingly taking the step to put their children on medication for the next 60 years, the next 70 years.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand how this is compassion. This is not compassion. This is complete brainwashing. And that is what the enemy has done, is he said, he's tricked us into destroying our own selves and our own generations. And so he doesn't have to do it. We just do his dirty work for him.
Right.
And I'm like, so bonus points to the devil, because now he's gotten us to destroy ourselves.
Yeah.
In the name of compassion, in the name of, well, we don't want them to kill themselves. And I agree. I don't want anybody to commit suicide, but the leap that has happened, that has said, oh, well, you'd rather have like a live daughter than a dead son. Well, but how did that leap come about? Because that leap in logic is not real. There's nothing that proves that this person will kill themselves if you don't change them. It's actually the opposite, statistically. And I don't have the study in front of me right now, but there are multiple studies that have been actually censored that are saying this, that the rise in people who have had gender assignment surgery, who now have regret, is, I think it's something like 30%, at least 30%.
Wow.
And then there is a social contagion portion of it. So what's happening is that children who are very malleable in their minds are being targeted by these activists. And I wouldn't say, like, I have friends and family who are homosexual, who would never dream of putting this thing in front of little children.
Yeah.
But these activists are, and these little children their minds are being conditioned to think these types of things are normal, and they're being conditioned to question themselves. And then you have the complete breakdown of all of the framework that used to keep us together. So the church framework has gone away because people don't go to church anymore. Yeah. And then you have the civic framework, which is crumbling. You have the extended family framework that has fallen. And so there's these kids that have been separated, not just from God, but also from a community that would come around them and help them understand who they are. And now you have another step up, that is, if you are a white kid, like, you're not allowed to be proud of your heritage anymore. Yeah. And so then you take nationality out, because you're a Nazi if you say you're proud, to be an American, or proud to be a Frenchman or something. Yeah. And so, like, you've taken that away from children as well. So they have no common identity or way of expressing themselves. And then here come these LGBTQ activists who say, hey, we'll give you a community, we'll give you a message, we'll give you something that stirs your heart to compassion, and then makes you have this battle cry, and it feels like this uniting, rallying thing to be an ally. And that's their Pied Piper song. So the last 100 years has been dedicated to breaking down society, and now this is coming in saying, I will replace what we broke down with my ideology.
Right.
And here's all these little children who are just like, okay, because they don't know any better. And then you have their compassionate mothers who are like, okay, like, we really do want to be kind to other people, so this is what we're going to do. And I'm like, what? Like, your view of kindness is not okay.
Yes.
Like, it's not really kind. And I don't know if I've ever said this to you, but I had this moment where the Lord spoke to me real forcefully, which he usually speaks in the quietness of my heart or through the word of God.
Yeah.
But I'm outside in my backyard, and I had a big pot, and I hadn't planted anything in the pot, and there were these tiny little weeds. And I had this moment where I was like, oh, they're so cute, I'm just going to let them grow because they're cute and they're tiny. And the Lord was like, no, see the end from the beginning. And what looks cute now is going to grow into a weed with lots of roots.
Wow.
And then you're going to have to deal with it in its mature form. And that's not going to be good. It's not going to be okay.
That's so awesome.
And it hit me like a ton of bricks, because I'm a very compassionate person. I'm a very like, yeah, go for it. Like,
Yeah.
sure, I'll say yes. Like, it's easier for me to say yes than no. Like, my default is yes. And so the Lord has had to show me where, through my husband in a lot of ways, but where you have the firm boundaries that are like, if you don't hold these things strictly, then you will destroy yourself.
Yeah.
And I feel, and that takes me to the spot where I think even in the church, we've thought of sexuality as either immoral or moral based on your individual actions, which is true. But I was just reading I was listening to one of our favorite people, Dr. Michael Heiser, preach through Leviticus, or not preach, but go through Leviticus. And he talked about the holiness code, which is Leviticus 17-26, which is all these ways that Israel, and specifically the priesthood, was to be different from the countries around them.
Yeah.
And Dr. Heiser said this thing, and it was so important. And it was that God picked Israel, and he wanted them to display his holiness and his goodness, and they had to not destroy themselves so that they could be around to accomplish his purposes.
Wow.
And so that they did not destroy themselves, there is a specific part that has sexual immorality. And he said that part was meant to say what is too similar to unite with, and what is different to unite with, and then how you are to protect the family that has been formed when the different parts unite.
Wow.
So I was like, whoa, I had never thought about it in that way. And we've become so individualized in the way we view our behavior just in general.
Yes.
That it doesn't matter how my behavior affects the whole. I'm just going to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so whether it's sexuality, whether it's, all kinds of different things, it's become out of fashion for us to worry about how our actions affect those around us.
Absolutely. Wow.
And so what he said is, if it is too similar, meaning if it is your family, your blood family, or if it is the same gender or sex as you, then it's out of bounds. And then then you unite with the different part, and that makes a whole, and then that creates a new family. And then you are to shepherd and watch over that family. And so all of the things that would infringe upon the health of that unit have to be guarded against, which is why fathers would be so protective of their daughters, and why you would be very mindful of your generations and your name in the earth continuing. And why the promise of children was so important, because the name had to continue in the earth so that the purpose of God is accomplished in the earth.
Yes.
And so I've said, oh gosh, like I look around and I'm like, we have completely thrown that concept out the window, where the enemy has come in and said like, oh, well, if you repress this, then it's repressed and it's going to come out in an ugly way, like Freud would say that. And that's actually a lie. That's not true. Like, it's where I have taken myself as a living sacrifice to Jesus. And I've said, here, Lord, this is my I think the Message calls it your everyday walking around life.
Yeah.
I have given that to the Lord, and I have surrendered my right as a Christian to my own sense of what is good, my own sense of right and wrong. And I've now adopted the sense that God has about my life. And God happens to care about your generations. God happens to care about the family unit. And he happens to care about like continuing that line so that the earth will be blessed. And so anyway, that's kind of my little spiel. I don't know if you have thoughts that you'd like to add.
Yeah, the thing, I mean, there was so many powerful statements that you made in light of the revelation that you've received, not just from Dr. Michael Heiser in Leviticus, but just everything that you shared. One of the things that, as you were talking, the Lord reminded me of a scripture. He reminded me of several scriptures, but one in particular was out of Daniel chapter 7, verse 25. And here, Daniel is seen a vision. He's got an angel there that is, that's kind of, he's able to ask this angel questions, and the Lord, and he's telling him what's going on as he sees this vision. But in verse 25, it is talking about the adversary of God, is talking about the devil, is talking about the enemy. And this is one of the things that it says that is a part of his scheme. And he shall speak. And again, I'm reading out of the King James. I may look at another translation in a minute, but it says, and he, talking of this adversary, Satan, the devil, shall speak great words against the Most High. And he shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to, this is his plan. This is his ultimate goal. And think to change times and laws, as they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. So just to break that down, like I said, I read it out of the King James, just to look at another translation of this. This is what it says in the Amplified in verse 25. It says, he will speak words against the Most High God and wear down the saints of God, the saints of the Most High, and he will intend to change the time and the law, and they will be given into his hands for a time. So here's a prophetic picture of a time when it seems as though, in this it says, the angel said to Daniel that it looks as though it's going to be given into his hands for a time. And when we look at our nation, when we look at the world, when we look at culture, it seems like the world has gone upside down, really, with people just losing their mind. I mean, I've seen some things that just there are no words for. There are just absolutely no words for. I saw an interview where this mathematician was talking to an interviewer, and she said that to think that 2 + 2 is 4 is racist.
Yes.
It's like, okay, so you know, you just think, okay, I'm from the South, so all I could say was bless your heart.
It's the kindest.
It's the kindest.
Response.
That's the kindest response. But and there's a lot underneath that bless your heart. But the other thing, the other scripture that God reminded me of, he's, first of all, this is the plot of the enemy, to change the times and laws. And we know that springboard is his purpose is to kill, steal, and destroy. That's the only reason he comes. And it's after the image of God in the earth. He's after everything that belongs to God in the earth. And so I then thought about Genesis chapter 11, when all of the peoples of the earth gathered at Shinar to build this tower. And the reason that was given by the people that were being motivated by Nimrod at that point, but it said, we want to come and do this to make a name for ourselves. And so the enemy is always attempting to change the times and laws by distorting or completely eliminating the image of God in the earth. And in turn, what he does with people who are fighting, who sometimes don't even know that they are under the influence of this spirit war that's going on, that they are being used as pawns for that purpose. Again, the underlying purpose is to eliminate the image of God in the image of God in the family, the image of God in the male, what a male is, what a woman is, what a family is, what a child is, all of those different things. The whole purpose is to eliminate the image of God, because in that way, when you do that, you destroy everything. And even your reading out of Leviticus, and the reason why. One of the things that one of my mentors and spiritual mothers, Dr. Patty Amsden, she and I had the privilege here not too long ago to do a conference together called Keepers of the Gate. And it's something that the Lord has been talking to me about because, he tells us in First Peter that we are a royal priesthood. And I think that when we think about the priesthood, especially from a New Testament paradigm, we often think that that's an Old Testament concept, the priesthood. But it says to us right there in First Peter chapter 2, verse 9, you are a chosen generation and you are a royal priesthood. So if we don't understand and know what the responsibilities of the priesthood are, it's not just to worship God and offer sacrifices, but the priesthood also represented being a gatekeeper, a keeper of the holy. And one of the things that Dr. Patty says that keeper holy in this context is meaning just to being a keeper of the whole, the wholeness of what the family, by God's definition, not by ours trying to make a name for ourselves. The keeper of the holy is keeping it whole so that it functions in the only way that God designed it to function. I saw an interview with a young woman who, for the longest time, lived the life she identified as male, and she actually was taking the hormones and her shots to change her voice, and she was just about to go through the surgery, and she had an encounter with the Lord, and she met the Lord, and she had a vision. The Lord gave her a vision, and she said she saw on one side, it was like a split screen, and on one side she saw a man and a woman, and on the other side she saw a man and a man, and a woman and a woman. And she said on the side of that was the man and the woman, she saw a whole line, down line, I'll use that phrase, of people, of children who had children, who had children, who had children. But on the other side of the screen, there was a red line under the man and the woman and the woman, because they no longer had the ability, no matter what type of surgery you had done, they no longer had the ability to produce or to be fruitful and multiply. And so my thought in this is that every attempt of the enemy is, again, to not only distort and pervert the image of God, but to literally stop the beautiful plan of wholeness of God from propagating in the earth. And so we do need to take our rightful place as royal priesthood, because part of our responsibility as a royal priesthood is to be a keeper of the holy, keeper of the gate. And like you were talking about earlier with that, as we were both talking, those mama bears, I think more so than anything, what we're seeing is I'm a dad. I love my children, but I tell you what, there's something, if you try to mess with a child. Now, as a dad, I'm gonna defend. I heard a comedian say this one time, and it was so true, because I'm sort of like a daddy. I'm sort of like a girl dad. I love my boys. I love my girls, but I am a girl dad. I don't mind admitting that to you. But I heard this comedian respond. He said, the first time he had a child, it was a son, and he looked in the eyes of this little bundle of joy, his son, for the first time, and his thought was, I'll die for this kid. I will die for this kid. And he said a few years later, then he had a little girl, and he looked into the eyes of this bundle of joy, and he said, I will kill for this kid. And so
one step further.
I know. And so, but one of the things that I've seen, whether it's a boy or a girl, when the love of a mom turns her into something more than just a nurturer, she becomes she becomes a force to be reckoned with. And I really see that as an innate quality given by God to do, as you were talking about in light of Leviticus, and that is to defend and keep holy. To we say that even when we take oaths. I was in the Navy, and my oath that I gave was to protect and defend this nation. And that's part of anything that you love, anything that you've been given a steward to steward over. That's going to be one of those inherent qualities, is to defend it and to keep it whole, to keep it functioning in the way. I mean, we do that with our cars, for crying out loud. You spend $45,000-$50,000 for a car, you're going to do everything you can to keep it whole.
Yes.
So you're going to try to keep it out of car wrecks. You're going to do your best to not run red lights so that you total it. Everything you do is not because you necessarily love it like you love a child, but because you've been given steward over it, and because you invested in it, and because it takes you back to your work or to church or to the place you want to get. You want to make sure that anything that you are a steward over, you keep it whole. And so
yes,
I feel like that's one of the things that we're seeing right now with this onslaught and assault of all of the things that are attempting to distort, pervert, destroy the image of God in the earth. There is now a time for those of us who've been given stewardship, and I'm like you. I do believe that there's a responsibility to be a steward over the earth, but not to be think that the earth is greater than a human's right to live.
Yes, like that value that God placed on humanity.
Mm-hmm.
It was, humans were the crown of creation.
Absolutely.
And it wasn't the other way around, So that, yes. Well, and what you say about the wholeness is very interesting, because in the Leviticus podcast Dr. Heiser was talking about, there was a lot of attention paid to who could be a priest. And it was not anyone who had a defect. And so most of us with 21st century sensibilities are like, oh, they were prejudiced. They wouldn't allow someone with a birth defect to be a priest. And that wasn't the point of it. The point of it was actually to say we live in a fallen world, and sometimes things happen which mar creation, which because there is sin and death in the world, should not happen, but it and most of us have at least one thing which mars our person. But so someone who didn't have a limb couldn't be a priest. And it had to be a man. And the reason it had to be those two things is because the man had to be a representative of how creation should be.
Wow.
Not that someone who was imperfect wasn't a full human, but you were aware that if you're not whole, you're not reflecting the original intent of the Creator. And so, and the priests within their own marriages, it had to be different. So like a Levite could marry anyone from, their tribe, but, and they could marry widows or someone who had been divorced, but the high priest couldn't.
Yeah.
The high priest could only marry a virgin from his own people. And the point of that was not because everyone else was dirty or messed up. It was because it was a representation for humanity, which has now been marred. And that, and we spend a lot of time in the heartbreak of the tension of our fallen state, our fallen nature. And I think that with compassion, so many people have said, oh, well, we've fallen. And so instead of mourning the loss of our fall, we celebrate our fall now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we've said, oh, well, broken is beautiful. And it's like, well, there's beauty that God takes out of brokenness. And if you surrender your brokenness to him, he does create beauty out of it.
Yes.
But instead of surrendering our brokenness to the Lord, we've said, no, I'm this broken pot and nothing can come through me now, but nobody mess with me because that's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like, it's such hubris. It's such pride, if I can borrow that term, that we've, instead of surrendering ourselves to our maker who knows us well and who understands his original intention for us and would have us not act in a way that would destroy us beyond recognition. If we surrender ourselves to him, he can make us whole again.
Absolutely.
And that is the redemption that Jesus offers us through the cross, and through his blood that is retroactively, redemptive of the ways that we have broken ourselves or the world has broken us or wounded us. And so instead of celebrating redemption, we celebrate brokenness.
Wow.
And then we take ourselves away from the God who could repair us.
Yeah.
Because we're too stubborn to return to him.
Absolutely.
And, I always, very often, when we do inner healing, we use that the prodigal son, the parable of the prodigal son, and the father didn't leave his place. He didn't leave his abode. He actually waited for the son to finish his dissipation, realize what had happened, and come home.
Amen.
And I think as Christians, we've become so compassionate towards brokenness that we've actually gone and said, it's okay to be broken. It's okay to be this way. We're not going to judge you. And it's not about not judging. It's about, is the lifestyle you're leading causing you and your generations to either be stopped or to be broken from here on out?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And is that compassionate or good of us to say, this is okay. Just wreck your family, wreck your life, and continue in it. We'll support you. No, that's not okay.
It's not.
And so one of the things that I think we've done is, instead of having the compassion of the father who is for, his heart is for his lost son, but he doesn't change what he believes is good or right.
Yeah.
He waits for his son to realize what has happened, and he welcomes him back with open arms. And I think that we miss that. We go too far in saying, oh, well, this is compassion. I'm sorry, that's not compassion. You've crossed into enabling. And when you cross into enabling, you give someone enough rope to hang themselves with, and they continue their destruction of themselves.
Yes.
And we just have gotten so blinded by activists who call us bigots for having, traditional morality views. We've gotten, oh, well, we don't want to be viewed as bigots or called bigots because then no one will come to us anymore.
Yeah.
And our reputation is wrecked. And it's like, so we're going to lose the very thing that makes us peculiar, makes us that royal priesthood, in order to reach out to these people. But then when we reach out to them, we have nothing left to offer them because we've compromised so far that we've lost our saltiness, we've lost our light, and we can't then rescue anyone. Because our stance has become so compromised by trying to be viewed as compassionate.
Wow.
And I just feel like we have to say search our heart and say, was I ugly? Was I evil? Was I mean? And like actually legitimately say, like, you know, Lord, if I was unkind or judgy to this person, like, please, Father, like, forgive me for judging that person. And that's not my heart. My heart is for restoration.
Yeah.
And so when you go to your doctor and your doctor says like, hey, sweetie, you need to lose a few pounds, which by the way, I have doctors who can't do that anymore. I know personally doctors who've been complained on for telling their patients they need to lose weight. And so they won't tell you that anymore. And so now we have everybody all, you know, harming themselves. Like, you know, I mean, my own personal doctor should have given me a lecture because I could stand to lose about 30 pounds, but she didn't. She just was like, yep, you need to stay on it. And that was all she said.
Wow.
So, so that's the place where we are, where everybody is so afraid of saying what is true that we're just sitting there and letting people destroy themselves.
Yeah.
And we don't have to be controlling or make decisions for them. I'm not saying like you go and make somebody stop being gay.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying I have an alternative view of this that works. So it's right here if you would like it, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
You know,
that's so good.
And you know, I'm not one of those like people who what is it? Somebody was talking about with the culture wars. He's like, we're either going to have Christian nationalism or gay Sharia, and there's no alternative to those two options. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's terrifying. But I do think that so much of what keeps Christians from talking is this label of being bigots or being theocratic.
Yeah.
And I would say that my personal stance is not theocratic. My personal stance is like, let's protect humanity.
Yeah.
But and sometimes that means like not doing what you feel like doing.
Right.
And sometimes that means making laws in accordance with that are perfectly common sense and good. But like that concept gets lost in the extremist language.
Yeah.
And then we shut up because we're afraid of being labeled as extremist or as phobic of something. And so we've been quiet because we don't want to be labeled phobic or extremist. And the problem is that we can't twist ourselves into pretzels enough for any activist to be acceptable to them.
Yeah.
Because Christ is always offensive. He was judicially murdered.
Yeah.
There is never a time where Jesus was so inoffensive that he didn't make someone mad with what he said.
Yeah.
And we have to say, like, I am his follower, therefore I know that the world will hate me. And I know that the world will misunderstand what I'm trying to say. And I know they will paint me in a certain way, and I will have to bear the consequences of that.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because that's what he did. And like, we follow in his footsteps. And so if he was ostracized and mocked, then we will be ostracized and mocked.
Absolutely.
And I think we have to come to that spot as believers and say, like, you can misunderstand me if you want to, but I can't agree with you. Like, I cannot affirm this thing. I love you, and therefore I cannot affirm this thing.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of the spot where I feel so passionately about, like, that it is just the enemy trying to destroy us and trying to destroy our generations.
Well, the thing that's interesting to me is, as you were talking, I had this thought. It's somewhat humorous, but it holds true. Of course, I'm thinking about several different adages. One is the 2-year-old who needs his diaper changed. And the fit that they throw when you try to help them. And they're so, I mean, at that moment they are screaming to the top of their lungs. And if we said that to keep them in a dirty diaper is compassion,
yes,
people would think that's ludicrous. No, because at that age or at that point, they have no grid, no concept or idea that what you're doing is helping and benefiting. And that's why there's such a need to have parents, or such a need to have the mama bears, or a need to have the priests to step in their priestly roles, because otherwise, I mean, there you'd have someone who's sitting in their own mess for the rest of their lives, or and that's not helpful or beneficial. And the other thought I thought was, if you have a car that again, using that example of a vehicle, automobile, but if you had a car, and I know people are going to laugh at this, you have a gas-powered engine car that identifies as an electric car, and it's without oil, and you just out of compassion decide that you're not going to put oil in it because it identifies as an electric car, you are going to blow the engine.
Yes.
And so we see that in very practical ways. I hope some people do. I hope in very practical ways in things in life. And this is where we are right now. Again, so I feel like, we talk about it even in our introduction, we say our goal is to inform, equip, and mobilize. So I'm praying that what this podcast will do and has done is mobilize you to know that being in that role, just as Megan said earlier, of being one who wants to keep the image of God holy in the earth, you're going to be ostracized, because it's not about being accepted or popular. You're gonna offend. Jesus did, but for the purpose of keeping the purpose and plan of God whole in the earth. And so I know we could talk forever on this topic. First of all, when the two of us get together, we could talk for 3 days without probably taking a breath. But we did want to just come on and just during this time, just let you know, first of all, again, that the whole premise and the original intent of everything that the Creator does is for the purpose of his image being manifest, because he is whole. He is holy. He is whole. He's complete. There's nothing about him that's flawed. And what he wants to do with us, even as his sons and daughters, is for us to bear his image in every aspect of our lives. And so I pray that our time together on this episode has kind of sparked you, has kind of ignited you to not feel as though you have to just be silent or quiet about things that are coming against your family, coming against your how you walk in life, because God has given you that unalienable right, and our Constitution backs that. So so I just I'm just thrilled and excited that I get to have these conversations with my partner in kingdom crime, I should say, Megan, but also that we get to share this with you, our listeners. And so we're going to bring this one to a close, but join us again the next time we're together. We've got some more fun and exciting topics. Like I said, we could talk all day. Who knows? We may even do a part 2 of this, but join us again. We are so thrilled that you are here, and just want to let you know we do this because we love you, and we love who Father has created you, and we will always stand with you for what God has created you to release in the earth. And everything we do is for the purpose of getting you to know your destiny today. So on behalf of Megan Ortega, my co-host, I'm Anthony Turner, and we say we love you, God bless you, and we'll see you soon. You've been listening to Your Destiny Today with Anthony Turner and Megan Ortega. To join us each week, don't forget to subscribe. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. To find out more or to invite Anthony to your next conference or event, go to destinymi.com. And you can contact Megan at info@freedomprayerbv, that's info@freedomprayerbravo.victor.org.